He said he wanted a quiet divorce. He got one. The kind that destroys a man's life without a single scream, without a single word. Just silence and truth. Would you stay silent if you had proof that the person you loved most lied to you every single day? Tell me in the comments, because silence can be the loudest revenge of all. I always thought silence was peace, that quiet meant stability, love even. But now I know silence can be the loudest scream a human heart makes when it finally breaks. My name isn't important. What matters is the story, because it could be anyone's story. Any woman who loved honestly, believed faithfully, and got played by a man too cowardly to be truthful. We'd been together 8 years, married for 5. To the world, we were one of those perfect couples, career-driven, coordinated in our goals, ambitious in the same rhythm. He was charming, witty, the kind of man who could make a room laugh with a story that didn't even have a punchline. People adored him. They'd say, "You're so lucky to have him," and I used to believe it. We had our morning rituals. I'd wake first, make coffee, and he'd come into the kitchen sleepy-eyed, hair messy, mumbling, "You're my reason for living," before kissing my shoulder. Those were the little things that fooled me, the tiny illusions that built a life of lies. He worked remotely most days. Tech consultant, flexible hours, flexible ethics, apparently. I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my best friend, the man who once cried when proposing because his hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped the ring. And then, one afternoon destroyed it all. It was nothing special at first, just a canceled meeting. A normal weekday, I decided to surprise him. I picked up his favorite Chinese takeout, shrimp dumplings, extra chili oil, and smiled to myself thinking, he's gonna love this. When I pulled into our apartment building, the sun was still high. Everything was ordinary. The doorman greeted me, I took the elevator humming. I texted him, "See you later, love." I didn't tell him I was coming early. I wanted it to be sweet. One of those small surprises that remind you why love is beautiful. The moment I opened the door, I felt it. That weird tension in the air. The sound of something that wasn't right. At first I thought it was a movie playing in another room, until I heard a voice. A male voice. Laughter. Low. Nervous. Then I heard my husband say, "Don't stop, I'm almost." I can't even finish that sentence. I froze. My body went numb before my brain even caught up. I walked toward the bedroom like I wasn't controlling my own legs, like some stranger was moving me forward. And then, there it was. He was on his knees, wearing my black lace bra, my thong, kneeling in front of a man I'd never seen before. The stranger looked embarrassed, half turning as if he'd been caught stealing. My husband didn't even notice me at first. He was too busy betraying every promise he'd ever made. I think I made a sound, a choked gasp or a sob. They turned, both of them. The other man stammered an apology, grabbed his things, and left. But my husband just stood there, trembling, face white as paper, trying to cover himself with his hands. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just pulled out my phone. My hand was shaking so hard that the camera blurred, but I hit record anyway, because some part of me needed proof that I wasn't hallucinating, that this was real, that I wasn't losing my mind. He lunged toward me, shouting, Don't record this." I backed away, breath heaving. "Don't touch me," I said. My voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes before destruction. And then I walked out. No screaming, no throwing things, no begging for an explanation. Just silence. That night, I didn't go home. I couldn't. I drove aimlessly until I found a Target still open, walked inside, and bought a bag full of new clothes and underwear. It wasn't about the clothes. It was about cleansing. I needed something untouched, something that didn't belong to us.
Then I booked an Airbnb, a small, minimalist one-bedroom with white walls and a wooden desk. It was sterile, quiet, anonymous. I stayed there scrolling through my phone, staring at the video I'd recorded but never pressed play. My phone lit up non-stop. Calls, texts, voicemails. His name filling the screen like a virus. Each message was a mix of fear and manipulation. Please, don't tell anyone. We can talk about this like adults. You'll ruin my life if this gets out. I'm begging you, keep it between us. There was not one real apology. Not one word about what he'd done to me. He didn't care about my heartbreak. He cared about his image. That's when something inside me shifted. A quiet, surgical kind of rage. The kind that doesn't scream or break things. The kind that calculates. I told no one. Not even my best friend. Not my parents. Every day, I woke up in that Airbnb with the same dull ache. Humiliation stitched into my chest. I'd replay everything in my head. Every kiss, every I love you, every morning coffee. It all felt like a setup. But I couldn't cry anymore. I was past that. I was grieving something I couldn't bury because it was still alive somewhere, calling me, begging me not to tell. He wanted a quiet divorce. And I decided he'd get one. Just not the kind he expected. Because silence, I realized, can kill reputations. Quietly. Efficiently. Like smoke suffocating a room. It started small. I spoke to a lawyer. Calm, factual, emotionless. I told her everything. I didn't mention the video, not yet. She looked at me with the kind of pity people save for widows and said, "We can make this work in your favor. Don't rush. Let him talk first." So I did. Every time he reached out, I let him talk. Every word he said was a weapon I could use later. I let him text apologies full of contradictions, promises that contradicted previous messages. I saved them all. Screenshots, recordings, timestamps. I learned that silence doesn't mean doing nothing. It means collecting everything. He thought my quiet meant weakness. He didn't realize it was strategy. Weeks passed. My lawyer began uncovering things I never knew. Hidden accounts, side projects, private messages from burner emails. My husband had been leading a double life for years, emotionally manipulating both men and women, using sympathy to climb socially and professionally. His work from home wasn't just work, it was his playground. And the more I learned, the less I wanted revenge fueled by anger. I wanted precision. I wanted him to watch everything crumble without knowing how or why. So I planned. I began with small cracks, reaching out to mutual acquaintances subtly, asking innocent questions. "Hey, have you noticed he's been acting off lately?" Or, "Is he still working with that client from the firm?" Seeds of doubt. Nothing direct, just enough to make people wonder. Because reputations don't need explosions to fall apart. Sometimes all it takes is whispers. And that was the beginning of the quiet war. The woman he thought was broken was becoming his downfall, one silent step at a time. Grief has phases, they say. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. But there's another phase no one talks about. Reconstruction. The point where you stop bleeding and start building your weapon out of the pieces of what broke you. That's where I was. Every morning in that Airbnb, I'd wake up before sunrise. The air would be still, and I'd just sit on the edge of the bed, breathing. No noise, no notifications, just that quiet hum of nothingness that I'd come to love. I didn't check his messages anymore, but I didn't block him either. Let him talk to the void. Let him think I was fragile, unpredictable, maybe still in shock. That illusion gave me time. I started writing things down, notes, timelines, fragments of memory. The night I caught him, the strange absences, the lies he told that now made sense. I wasn't just journaling, I was documenting a case. Every lie had a date, every betrayal had proof. At first, I told myself I was doing it for closure, but somewhere between the third page and the 20th, I realized it wasn't closure I wanted, it was control. He'd taken that from me. My dignity, my self-respect, my trust in my own instincts. But now, I was reclaiming it, piece by piece, one entry at a time.
He kept reaching out. The tone of his messages changed like shifting weather. At first, "We can fix this, please. I'll go to therapy." Then, "I never meant to hurt you. You have to understand, I'm confused." Then, finally, "If you tell anyone, I swear I'll..." He never finished that sentence. But the threat hung there, thinly veiled beneath fear. He thought I'd destroy him publicly, maybe post the video, send it to his employer. That's what he feared most, the loss of his perfect image. He'd built his entire life around reputation, around being the reliable, charismatic man everyone adored. But I didn't want to destroy him like that. That would be too simple, too merciful. Public humiliation ends quickly. Private decay lasts forever. So I let him breathe. And while he thought the storm had passed, I was building the thunder. Revenge, I learned, is 90% research. I started small, checking his LinkedIn, old contacts, coworkers, clients. I noticed subtle changes. A few people had disconnected from him. Others hadn't endorsed his skills in months. His company's projects were slowing. Then, one night, curiosity pushed me deeper. I logged into our old shared laptop, the one he used before switching to his work machine. It still had some saved passwords. Emails. Hundreds of them. There were receipts from secret hotel bookings, encrypted chats with usernames I didn't recognize. Photos that made my stomach turn, not because of what they showed, but because of how comfortable he looked in them, happy, free. He had built an entire identity behind my back, a network of men, secret meetups, fake stories about being trapped in a cold marriage. He called me cold, the woman who sacrificed her weekends to help him launch his business. The woman who celebrated every small win, cheered every client signed. That's when I stopped feeling heartbroken. I started feeling sharp. I copied everything. Every file, every message, every invoice. A quiet digital ghost slipping through his world. I didn't plan to talk to anyone, not yet. But the universe has a way of testing your resolve. One evening, while scrolling through his messages, I found a name I recognized. Tom, his old college friend. A good man, kind, genuine. He'd always treated me with respect. They used to work on freelance projects together. So I reached out. "Hey, Tom. It's me. Hope you're doing well. Random question. Has my husband been in touch about that business venture he mentioned?" He replied within minutes. "Actually, yeah, weird timing. He asked me to partner with him on a new app launch, something about cybersecurity tools. Said you'd be helping with the marketing side." I froze. He was using my name, my reputation. "Yeah," I replied carefully. "That's not true. We're actually separated right now." Tom went quiet for a bit, then wrote, "I'm sorry, I didn't know. Honestly, I had a strange feeling. He said you were dealing with mental health issues and needed time off. I guess he wanted to cover his tracks." There it was. The narrative he was spreading, that I was unstable. That single text turned my silent patience into fire. He wasn't just protecting his secret, he was rewriting reality, making me the villain in his story. So, I made a decision that night. If he wanted silence, I'd weaponize it. I didn't confront him, I didn't expose him. Instead, I reached out to a few of his professional contacts, subtly, politely. Hey, just confirming, has the cybersecurity app been approved through compliance yet? Oh, and could you please remove my name from the project deck? I'm not involved. Every message was a spark, and soon the fire spread. Questions started to circulate in his professional network. Why was his wife pulling her name off his projects? Why wasn't she disappearing from joint ventures? Why wasn't she defending him? People don't need proof to doubt someone. They just need inconsistency. And I fed them plenty of that, quietly, carefully, invisibly. Meanwhile, I made sure my own name stayed clean. I updated my LinkedIn, reconnected with old colleagues, applied for jobs with companies that respected discretion. I built my image as independent, calm, successful, everything he wasn't. He thought silence meant submission, but silence can also mean evolution. The divorce paperwork took shape slowly. My lawyer and I designed it like an ambush, legally airtight, emotionally devastating. He wanted amicable, he'd get compliant. We requested asset transparency, bank statements, all financial disclosures. I knew he'd try to hide money. I had proof that he'd already done it before, transferring small sums to hidden accounts under fake consulting firms. My lawyer smiled when she saw the evidence. "This will ruin him in court," she said softly. "I know, but we'll never go to court." She looked puzzled. "I'm not going to drag him through it publicly. He's going to destroy himself, trying to protect what doesn't exist anymore." A few weeks later, I started hearing whispers. Friends, mutual ones, reached out awkwardly. "Hey, is everything okay between you guys? He seems off. He told people you had a breakdown. He's been drinking a lot lately." I didn't correct them. I didn't deny anything. I just said, "I hope he finds peace." That line worked like poison disguised as kindness. No denial, no accusation, just mystery. Because the human mind fills silence with whatever story fits its bias. And the bias was already turning against him. The man who was once the charming success story started looking like a liar trying too hard to stay polished. His coworkers whispered about his absences, clients withdrew projects, friends began to distance themselves. Reputation, I realized, is like glass. It doesn't shatter loudly, it fractures quietly until it simply collapses. There were nights when guilt tried to creep in, when I'd sit on the Airbnb balcony, staring at the city lights, and wonder if I'd gone too far. Was I becoming like him, manipulative, deceitful? But then I'd replay that night, the image of him wearing my clothes, on his knees for someone else, begging me not to ruin his life. The selfishness of it. No, I wasn't like him. I was just finishing what he started, with precision instead of chaos. Revenge, I learned, doesn't always taste sweet. Sometimes it tastes like clarity. One morning, my lawyer called. "She's ready to sign," she said, "but he's asking for a confidentiality clause, specifically that you never mention the reason for the separation." I smiled. Of course he was. He wanted the illusion of dignity, the same illusion he'd clung to all his life. I agreed, but with a twist. We inserted a clause he didn't notice, a condition requiring complete transparency of all marital finances prior to signature. Hidden accounts, off-the-book transfers, all must be declared. If he refused, the agreement would be void, meaning I could take everything to court. If he agreed, he'd be forced to expose every lie. Either way, he'd lose. He signed. Desperate men don't read fine print. Within a month, his accounts were audited, his company's reputation questioned, and his image tarnished beyond repair. Not because I exposed him, but because his lies did. I didn't leak a thing. I didn't speak a word. I just didn't stop the truth from walking out on its own. The day the divorce finalized, I received an email from him. Short, pathetic. "I hope you're happy. You've ruined me." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "No, you ruined yourself. I just stopped cleaning up the mess." Then I blocked his email, deleted the video, and finally slept without nightmares. Some people imagine revenge as fireworks. Bright, loud, spectacular. Mine was more like erosion. Slow, patient. A single drop of truth wearing through the stone of his life until everything he built crumbled into dust. Weeks passed after the divorce papers were signed. I expected relief to arrive like thunder, loud, sudden, final. Instead, it crept in like morning fog. Every day, another knot inside me loosened. I'd make coffee in my new apartment, sunlight spilling across the counter, and for a second, I'd forget what pain felt like. Then the memory would return, but duller this time, like an old scar rather than an open wound. Meanwhile, his silence was louder than ever. No more texts, no more calls, just absence. But absence has a language of its own. I could hear it in the whispers reaching me from mutual friends. He's not doing well. He's been missing work. He sold his car. The fall had begun. He'd always been the golden boy, the one everyone trusted, the one who could talk his way into any opportunity, but charm without integrity is like a glass bridge. It looks solid until the cracks show. His company audited his accounts after the divorce settlement exposed inconsistencies. The hidden transfers, the fake consulting invoices, all of it surfaced. He wasn't charged, but the damage was done. The firm quietly let him go for personal reasons. His coworkers stopped returning calls. His LinkedIn went dark. He even deleted his Twitter. A man who once posted motivational quotes every morning now erased his own voice from the internet. He had built his kingdom on perception, and perception had turned against him. One Saturday afternoon, months later, I saw him again. It wasn't planned. I was at a small bookstore downtown, one of those cozy ones with a coffee corner and the faint smell of old paper. And then I heard it, that familiar voice, thin and hesitant. "Hey." I turned. He looked smaller, not physically, but spiritually. His confidence was gone, his posture folded inward like he was apologizing to the air around him. His once polished suit replaced by a faded jacket. For a second, pity tried to climb up my throat, but pity is just the ghost of old love, and I'd already buried that. We stood there in silence, surrounded by shelves of stories that weren't ours anymore. "I didn't expect to see you," he said finally. I live here now, I replied, simple and factual. He nodded, eyes darting everywhere but mine. You look, good, he said. I am, I answered. A pause, then the inevitable. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. That line. Those same words men always use when they want forgiveness without accountability. You did mean it, I said softly. You just didn't think you'd get caught. He flinched, as if the quietness of my tone hurt more than shouting ever could. Then he whispered, Everyone turned on me. I lost everything. I looked at him, really looked at him. The tremor in his hand, the exhaustion under his eyes, the desperation of a man finally realizing that actions echo. I didn't turn them against you. The truth did. He opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. For the first time, he seemed truly speechless. Not out of guilt, but out of recognition. That's when I understood the final step of revenge. It isn't making them suffer. It's watching them understand why. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, staring at the woman reflected there. Same face, same eyes, but different energy. The timid wife was gone. The silence that once felt like weakness now shimmered with authority. I realized something strange. I didn't want him ruined anymore. He was already ruined. And I didn't need the ashes. What I wanted was mine. Peace, independence, and the quiet pride of knowing I'd survived without turning cruel. That's when I started to heal. Truly heal. I took the settlement money, every cent he thought he could hide, and invested it carefully. My lawyer helped me open a consulting business. Small at first, but it grew fast. Apparently, people respected calm precision more than loud ambition. I learned new skills, met new people, even started volunteering at a local shelter on weekends. Every act of kindness felt like reclaiming a fragment of humanity he'd tried to strip away. And with each passing month, the distance between then and now widened until it felt like another lifetime. One evening, I received an email from someone I didn't know, a man named Mark. His words were short, nervous. I think we've both been lied to by the same person. He told me you were abusive, that you ruined his career. I believed him until I saw the truth for myself. Attached was a screenshot, a message thread between Mark and my ex. Lies stacked on lies. My name dragged through everyone. But what caught me wasn't anger. It was relief. Because now, finally, someone else saw. I wrote back, "You don't owe me an apology. I already forgave the part of me that believed in him." Mark replied, "He's alone now. Nobody trusts him. I just thought you should know." I closed the laptop gently, took a deep breath, and smiled. Not out of joy, but completion. Revenge wasn't about watching him lose people. It was about realizing I no longer cared whether he did. A week later, I went back to our old apartment building, not to see him, but to pick up a box of things still stored in the basement locker under my name. The doorman recognized me and gave me a sad smile. "He moved out last month," he said quietly. "Didn't leave a forwarding address." When I opened the storage unit, everything smelled of dust and stale memories. Old photo frames, books we never read. The mug, he said, was his favorite. I found one thing I hadn't expected:
a small jewelry box. Inside was the engagement ring he'd once slipped onto my trembling finger, the one I'd left behind when I ran. For a moment, I just stared at it. That tiny circle of gold, the symbol of eternity. I slipped it into my pocket, walked out of the building, and stopped by the bridge near the river. The water below was calm, reflecting the evening lights. I held the ring for one last time, whispered, "Thank you for the lesson," and let it fall. The splash was barely audible, but to me, it sounded like thunder. Months later, a friend asked me if I ever missed him. I thought about it, really thought. I miss who I thought he was, but I don't miss who he turned out to be. She smiled. That's growth. Maybe it was. Or maybe it was just acceptance. The realization that not all love stories are meant to be lifelong, but every heartbreak can be educational if you survive it with your integrity intact. Before closing that chapter for good, I wrote him one final letter. Not to send, just to write.
You once begged me to stay silent. You thought silence was protection, a shield for your lies. But silence became my sword. You used my trust as a mask. I used your fear as fuel. And now we are both free. You from pretense, me from you. I folded it neatly, placed it in my drawer, and never looked at it again. Sometimes revenge doesn't require delivery. It just requires closure. It's strange how life circles back. The same silence that once suffocated me now comforts me. It fills my mornings with calm, my nights with clarity. I'm not angry anymore. Not at him, not at myself. Because I finally understand that silence isn't the absence of power. It is power. The kind that doesn't need to shout. The kind that rebuilds instead of destroys. The kind that heals. Time has a strange way of healing. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't promise perfection. It just keeps moving forward, dragging you along with it, even when your heart stays behind. 2 years had passed since that night by the river, the night I let the ring sink into the dark water. 2 years since I stopped measuring my days by what I'd lost and started counting what I'd learned. Life, once a battlefield, had turned into something gentle. I'd moved into a small home surrounded by quiet streets and blooming jacaranda trees. The mornings smelled of coffee and calm. The nights hummed with peace instead of paranoia. I'd built my consultancy from scratch, one small project after another. And somehow, without the noise of ego or desperation, it began to flourish. Clients didn't come from my charm, they came from my integrity. Because when you've been betrayed, honesty becomes your sharpest weapon and your safest home. One Thursday afternoon, while finalizing a proposal for a new client, my assistant walked in holding a folder. She said, "There's a man here asking for you." "Who?" "He says his name is Daniel." The world paused for a heartbeat. I hadn't heard that name aloud in over a year. "Send him in," I said. He walked in, slower, thinner, older. The confident air he used to wear like armor was gone. He wasn't the villain in my story anymore. He was just a tired man standing at the end of his undoing. We both sat. Silence filled the space between us like an invisible wall. He said, "Finally, I came to apologize. Not for you, for me, because I can't live with who I became." I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence tells people whether forgiveness is possible or not. He continued, "I ruined everything I touched. The lies, the women, the money. I thought I was untouchable. But it all caught up. You were right.
Truth has a way of finding people. I nodded slowly. It always does, even when we hide behind excuses. He looked down, eyes glistening. I lost my job, my reputation. Even my parents barely talk to me. I know I deserve it. I needed to face you once before I disappear completely. The word disappear hit me differently, not as a threat, but as surrender. He wasn't seeking forgiveness, he was seeking closure. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city that had watched both of us change. I don't hate you anymore, I said softly. He turned, startled. I did, for a long time, but hate keeps you tied to the person who hurt you, and I refuse to live tethered to pain. He blinked, unable to speak. I hope, I said, that someday you stop punishing yourself and start rebuilding. Not for me, not for anyone, but for you. He nodded, silent tears slipping down his face. Then quietly, he said the words I never thought I'd hear. You were the only person who ever saw the good in me. I just didn't know how to be that man. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He left the room like a ghost dissolving into daylight, slowly, completely, finally. And just like that, the story ended. Not with shouting or vengeance, but with understanding. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching the skyline flicker with city lights. I thought about how much energy I'd once spent wishing for revenge, for karma, for justice, for his pain. And yet, the universe had delivered it in its own perfectly timed way, without my interference. All I had to do was stay still long enough to let it unfold. My victory wasn't loud. It didn't trend online. It lived quietly inside my chest, in the form of peace. A kind of peace no apology could ever buy. That's when I realized something profound. Revenge doesn't restore what's lost. It simply reminds you that you survived losing it. Months later, at a conference in Abu Dhabi, I met someone new. His name was Omar, a civil engineer, grounded, kind, steady. He didn't speak in grand promises. He asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to the answers. When he learned I was divorced, he didn't flinch. He just smiled and said, "Then you already know what love isn't. That's a good start." Our friendship grew naturally, slow and unforced, like healing itself. There was no rush, no fear of betrayal, because this time I wasn't looking for validation. I was looking for alignment. And as days turned to months, I felt something I hadn't in years: trust. Not in someone else, but in myself. One evening, I visited that same riverbank where I'd thrown the ring. The air was cool, the water calm. I sat on the bench, watching the reflection of the city lights shimmer across the surface. I thought about that younger version of me, the one who cried herself to sleep, who begged for answers, who believed silence was weakness. I wanted to hug her, to tell her that one day she'd thank the pain for shaping her spine out of steel and her heart out of light. Pain had been my teacher, silence my strategy, time my healer. And forgiveness, the quiet miracle I never thought I'd reach, turned out to be my final revenge. Because forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. It means letting yourself go free. Back home, I began journaling again, something I'd stopped years ago when the relationship consumed me. Page by page, I wrote about strength, betrayal, truth, rebirth. Then, one night, I posted a short essay online titled "The Art of Quiet Revenge." It wasn't about him. It was about reclaiming yourself without destruction, about how the most powerful revenge is to become everything they said you couldn't. It went viral.
thousands of women commenting, sharing their stories, finding solace in my words. Some said it gave them courage to walk away. Some said it helped them finally heal. And for the first time, I realized that my pain had become my purpose. That was the real full circle. Sometimes I imagine a world where he changed before the damage, where he learned to love honestly, where I didn't have to lose years of myself to find my strength. But then I remember that world doesn't exist, and it doesn't need to, because the life I live now is stronger for every scar that built it. If he were here, I'd tell him, "You were a chapter, not the story. A lesson, not a legacy." And that's enough. People often ask, "Did you forgive him?" I always answer the same way. Yes, but forgiveness isn't a gift I gave him, it's one I gave myself. Because in forgiving, I didn't excuse what he did, I simply stopped carrying it. Revenge may feel satisfying for a moment, but peace lasts a lifetime. And peace, real, quiet, earned peace, is the kind of victory no one can take away. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fire or fury. It's rebuilding your life so beautifully that even the memories of their betrayal look small against the light you've created. It's standing tall, calm, untouchable, while the person who broke you drowns in the silence of their own guilt. It's never about making them pay. It's about showing yourself that you can rise without cruelty, without noise, without needing their downfall. Because in the end, silence was never weakness. It was strategy. It was power. And it was the sound of my freedom. If you were in her place, would you choose revenge or peace? Tell me in the comments. And remember, sometimes silence is the loudest victory.